Thank you for joining us once again on this episode of the Backseat Babes podcast. Today we're discussing the Off-Broadway hit Titanic. But before we dive into this hilarious show, please like, follow, and subscribe to us at Backseat Babes on all social media platforms. Spoiler warning, we will be discussing many aspects of the show, so if you want to experience it in all of its glory without any preconceived notions, please save this video for later, and we'd love to hear from you then. Thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the show. RJ, another one in the books. You ready to talk about Titanic?
I was going to try to come up with like some pun to respond, but I'm not witty enough.
It's also 9:30 at night, and we're recording what's essentially our third part of another. It's been a long day. We are doing it. We are live, and that's okay. We're not actually live by the time you hear us. We're just going to be recorded. So, but this is one Titanic. This was one that last time we went to New York, you were like, man, we should have gone to see this show. And so when we were going this time, I had brought up, like, we should try to see if we can get into the show. So I guess we're going to backtrack and say, where did you get introduced to Titanic? Like, where's your connection? Was it such like a necessity for you to really want to see this one?
TikTok. No, I mean, kind of a little bit. Some of the folks who were in the original cast, or maybe not original, I shouldn't say original, but that had been cast in this show previously. I'd seen posts from them. I've seen them in other productions. And so that was the initial draw. But then, of course, because it's the way that TikTok works, it just kept showing up. And
sure.
It just seemed so extreme and so just the most. And I'm not typically a comedy person.
You're not.
Per se. But it looked like so campy that I had to give it a go. And then I did actually 2 weeks before we went, ran into someone that I knew that had gone to see it and said it was amazing. So yeah, I mean, kind of entirely by accident and then not.
I think that there's quite a few shows that did the TikTok route, because I'm thinking along the lines of, if we're going on Broadway, Six went the route of trying to blast it all over social media. On TikTok, it was every other video, and then the other one was Dracula Terrors, which also was all over TikTok everywhere. But Titanic was one of those ones that, like, clips were surfacing and like funny bits and trailers and the idea of Celine Dion and stuff like that. All of this stuff just kept appearing. It was like almost like every third video for a while there, it was a Titanic related video, and it really kind of took the world by storm. Again, kind of like Dracula Comedy of Terrors and Six, like the people just latched onto it. It kind of became like the people's show in a way through social media.
And I mean, I'm sure we'll circle back to this, but like, is it the people's or is it just the gays?
That's fair. That the algorithm has a way of connecting us together with our people.
And they play into that. So the intentionality in the marketing and the PR there. But I do think that they lucked out. And I hate to say that in that way, but Celine had this kind of re-entrance into the public eye recently, or kind of simultaneously as the show was coming to be. And I think that also kind of played a little bit of a role. Because if you Google, probably, I haven't tried, but if you Google Celine Dion enough, I'm sure that this does, in some facet, if you're any type of theater goer, show up for you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because, like, I guess we'll just dive into it. So you're right. This did kind of come along with the life of Celine Dion, of, like, with her health issues, with the documentary. There was a life that she had kind of her own. And granted, we've known Celine Dion for our entire life. Pretty much, since Titanic, which is what this is connected to, she's been kind of in the popular eye. And she's also been like a gay icon in a little bit of a way too, which I think, again, plays into that queerness of the story. And so there's probably a lot of benefits that they had from being connected with Celine Dion. Seeing that this is kind of was your show, this was your pick for New York, I want you to tell the people in as many words as you want, what is Titanic and how is it related to Celine Dion?
I mean, it's not, but it is. I mean, they make it be, right? So the premise of the show is not what I actually originally anticipated when it started.
Okay.
I was, how is this going to go? But
sure.
In summary,
how'd you think it was going to go?
We're actually at a Titanic museum.
Yep.
And Celine Dion just walking in and be like,
"What's up?"
I was on Titanic, and here's what really went down. So it really is a story from. She is the narrator. She's the storyteller. It's an obvious, immediate. Everything is a joke.
Everything.
And everything is exactly what you would expect from just breaking out into song. It pokes fun at musical theater, actually, and at Celine Dion, I think in a tasteful way, and of course at the Titanic. But yes, all blended together to make this very subtle musical comedy.
And something I want to just go back to, I'm going to come back to, I want to know what you thought it was going to be, because I also had some preconceived notions of what the show was going to be. But this is not like Celine Dion telling the story of what actually happened on the Titanic. This is her retelling of the James Cameron film from the 90s, of characters that probably weren't even on the boat. You know what I mean? These are she's telling a fictional story, a fabricated story about fictional characters, which adds to the campiness of this entire show.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much camp of Celine Dion being yeah, I've been around for hundreds of years basically, and I was on the ship, and let me tell you what's going on, and then tells this completely wrong story from the one that we know. What did you think it was going to be?
It is a condensed. I mean, what the runtime was, maybe an hour.
Oh yeah,
hour and a half, hour 40-ish.
I think it was 100 minutes straight through.
And so nonstop. You're just all the extremes that could happen, and I think a lot of the characters and the mannerisms are. Even like you said, they're pointing towards the movie, and they're specifically even pointing towards the actors, and maybe some of the things that when you and your friends have watched Titanic the movie, you're like, oh my god, that's so ridiculous, or that's so funny, or a drinking game, right? I could for sure see somebody when they were creating this musical, I can see a group of friends sitting around this movie being like, isn't this hysterical? Take a shot every time somebody falls in the water. It's just it's that kind of setup.
100%. This was again, the only word that comes to mind is camp. This is the epitome of what camp is. But going back, you said about sitting around with Titanic, you and your friends. You saw Titanic, right? This is a film that you saw back in the 90s, maybe early 2000s, that you're familiar with. Don't disappoint me now, RJ.
And the reference to, I think, if I remember right, they do reference the VHSs, and the fact that you literally would have had to, did we press play and rewind and fast forward and rewind to VHS tapes? Yes, we did.
Now, I have to stop. I have to stop real quick and just let you know that Titanic has always been one of my favorite films for no reason other than that I'm probably gay. But my parents got the VHS for their wedding present, like for their wedding party, and that's how I became discovered by this. And I put the first one in, I watched it, and again, two VHSs, people. We had to watch through two VHSs to get this. I opened up that second one, RJ, it was smashed. I could not watch part two of Titanic. And so, picture like 8-year-old gay little Brian sitting there needing to know what's going to happen and not getting that. The VHS was crushed, indeed. But it was, again, it was a story I was very familiar with. And I do not think that this is what I thought about it either. I thought it was going to be like Celine Dion, like serving as like a omniscient like narrator, or almost like a fairy, like the Enchantress from Beauty and the Beast, almost, of just being like the like guiding force, but not actually in there. And then she was like smack dab in every single part of this story. So I do have to know, what did you think this was before you went into it?
I think very similarly. I knew that she was the comedic one of the. Just from what I had seen, I knew that there was comedy, hardcore comedy involved with her, but I didn't. Sometimes when you see those publicity stunts, it's like, oh, that's the like only funny part that person gets. And so, as it was unfolding, and even just the staging in regards to her narrating for like a minute and then leaving, but then the way in which the character reasserts herself,
yes,
and that is the comedic part, because it is similarly how it happened in the movie, because that's how extreme, right? We're playing off those extremes. I was completely not expecting that, but it was some of the more, I think, some of the things that got the hardest laughs.
I'm thinking of one of the scenes. I think it's when Jack and Rose are singing together, and she's like in the row in front of us, was like hunched over, like getting ready to run back in, and just like looked like total like witch from Snow White, ready to pop back in and like get the spotlight. That was just like, I was crying at how funny it was, for no other reason than like it was just so over the top, and we were a part of that.
And I think it plays on the idea too that like when a celebrity reaches, right? Like when a celebrity just appears, all of our attention is now going to that person. It doesn't matter what else is happening. And so that character specifically plays on that in regards to like, I am the dead center of attention, no matter, like, because I am who I am. I'm thinking even of the drawing scene, right?
Yes.
Where she's letting, and just like who even is Rose? We don't care,
right?
So yeah, it's
funny. It's funny as a concept to think that like somebody who wrote a song or performed a song for a film could, like, the idea of like they could tell the story and that they're such a part of it, because you really do have, over the years we've come to assert like Celine Dion with Titanic for My Heart Will Go On. Like they are the pairing, and so it's interesting that like we got to see her have a different side of this and have all of this power over this story in a way that kind of was reminiscent. I got a little bit of the vibes of like Anne Juliet, but like not in like the subtle way. It was like you said, very in your face and very funny, of being like we're rewriting history to tell the story that I want to tell.
Yeah, I did actually think of that too in regards to maybe just how youthful the jokes felt. Yep. They felt fresh, they felt new, they didn't feel tired or aged at all. It was just very relevant, which of course, like, the show is not very old, so of course that makes sense, but very as we'll talk about more, very improv-y, very off the cuff.
and very self-referential, kind of like what you mentioned too. Like, this is poking fun at both the show and the concept and the people in the movie. Like, shout out to Andrew Keegan Bulger, who played Victor Garber. Like, he played the actor who played the captain. He did not play the captain, which I think is just like, again, there's so many layers to the story that we're telling here that there was always something for someone to pick up. And like, there's some jokes that I heard, and I like the one that I'm so sorry to my editor for this, the Bukkake one, because of Rose's last name, that like you could definitely tell that the grown men in the crowd loved that one. And then there was also jokes about like how men are horrible and taking, and like controlling women, and that's not going to happen. And like there were so many different layers to that telling the story, that made Titanic kind of even more interesting in the self-referential story that it was telling. Do you feel like it did pretty well? Like, do you feel like, obviously in the end it kind of followed the story pretty well of Titanic? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, you get the plot, you get the. I think you maybe not even the plot, but you get what you also took away from the movie, which of course is the purpose, right? Like the scenes that people remember from the movie are exactly what you're taking away from the production.
For sure. Like the door, and she's like, you could be up on this door. Like, and those things, like all the things that we think about the show, they were also thinking. So yeah, when we look at we look at the story, we have these characters recognized. We have Rose and we have Jack. We have Annie, not Annie. What is her name? What am I thinking of? Molly Brown. Sorry, Annie, Get Your Guns, a different film. Like these characters, and they're all there, and they're pretty much represented. But I think the ones that we need to talk about are the ones that were largely changed. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask you, what did you think of the iceberg?
Amazing. Rightfully so. I mean, and it is like, once again, the joke on the unfortunately on the reality of the situation, and also the movie, of just like, there's this massive frickin' iceberg. It literally, in this instance, couldn't be louder and prouder and shinier and like a frickin' disco ball, and you still missed it.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think, of course, just playing on that characterization, and also just killing it. I'm trying to remember what song they were singing.
It was Tina Turner's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I was like, blow me away.
Yeah.
Which, of course, I mean, obviously they're all extremely talented, but the dynamic change from, as we know, the Titanic feeling very like kind of sullen, and serious a lot of the time, even though it's not, to just like a massive dancing iceberg.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was River Deep Mountain High, which is even more funny because it's
yes.
It's a mile high iceberg that like could not miss, and they did. And there again, some of these characters, like the one friend's named Luigi, and so they played that up with Luigi from Mario, and like they get to really kind of, you got to see a lot of these actors, and we're gonna talk about this more in part 2, but you get to see a lot of these actors have a lot of fun in these roles. And so I think it made me appreciate the characters more, because when you're watching Titanic, Jack's kind of a dick sometimes. Sometimes Rose is a little bit of a brat. Like, there's like, the characters are very much set and rigid in like who they are, and yes, they have growth, but you got to see those exaggerated with the characters, and you got to see the actors kind of play with those characters and have fun with those bits. And so that made me appreciate Rose and Jack and their story a little bit more. But what did you think of these characters overall?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think it's interesting who they decided to characterize, and as a character, what objects. Obviously, the iceberg, Luigi. Like you're just, and granted, we know that there's a handful of folks that in the movie you reference and um, but Cal, I mean, there's so much, um, and everyone was so different and approached differently that um, it's just, that's why it's one of those shows that it's not just you laugh and then there's not another joke for another 15 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
I think we were laughing through the majority of the show.
Absolutely. Which again, when we come back to the comedy, I do want to talk about it. But I think it's worth noting that like you who does not like comedy that much was laughing so hard that not only were you coughing, but like you did have like your eyes were watering. Like you were having such a grand time in something that I don't want to say that I like question like is RJ gonna have a good time, but like again, it didn't feel like it was your show, your type of show. And to see you, and not just you, but like we did not have a full theater that day because granted it was in the middle of the week. Um, but people, the whole room just was so roaring with laughter and connected with these characters and what was going on that it was a great experience for that. Um, are there any themes to the story? I know that we usually talk about themes, but is there themes to a comedy like this?
Comedy.
Laughter being the
If
medication.
Yeah, I mean, obviously because they're kind of following something that's already in existence. I don't know that there was particularly a theme aside from just the theme or approach or direction of the show in regards to actors taking a lot of liberties all of the time. Um, if you can call that a theme, then I guess that. But aside from that, just yeah, being the most.
Sure. I do think it's interesting how they, in a way, they kept some of the themes intact of like love and freedom and breaking out of the chains that kind of shackle you to society, which is something that speaks to where a lot of us probably feel right now as well. And like, so the story of like, you still saw some of those in the story between Rose and Jack and Kale and Rose's mom, but told in a way that was like made the kind of like the spoonful of sugar. It was easier to digest some of those things a little bit easier than having like a drama play out those differences, those societal differences specifically. So I did think that was really interesting that they were able to keep some of those intact without losing it into the comedy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, you have the kind of class discussion going. You have the expectations, the marriage um, kind of set up, in regards to who's telling you what to do at a young age, where you fall in the family, what that means for your future, what it means to even be on that boat, right? So, yeah,
Sure. And they definitely they were able to still explore those. Um, I think what's interesting too about the character dynamics is how dependent all of the characters became. Again, as the narrator, it makes sense, but like the characters and their dynamics and their relationships with each other all became so dependent on Celine and who she was and where she was at in the story that it almost didn't matter about the story of the Titanic. You know what I mean? Like it didn't. It was more about how is Celine going to interact with Rose, or like how is she going to tell the story of how Jack met Rose, and like how is she going to interpret that? That was kind of the character dynamic that really jumped out to me that kind of drove this story to the finish line.
well, and at some points too, and I can't remember um, exactly at what part it was, but the fact that they did interweave improv in here so hard, as we'll talk about in part two, is what kept that character line between Celine and everyone else so on edge in regards to like, oh, like the people on stage don't know what's going to happen next, and also you don't know what's going to happen next. So it feels hilarious and funny and new for literally everyone in the room.
Which was a huge component of this that I guess I also wasn't expecting, and I am excited to break that down in part two. Is the comedic aspect that Celine did bring to this, in relation to the other characters. Again, telling the story of Jack and Rose. But if there's one more relationship I do want to mention before we wrap up that stood out to me, was still the relationship between Molly Brown and Rose. I thought it was very interesting that they still kept those tender moments, because in the film, Molly is kind of the voice of reason for, Rose's mom, and like kind of telling Rose to like do what you want, live your life, like don't let her dictate you. Having been poor and have raised up in society. And so I did like that they still kept some of that. And again, some of that was self-referential, some of that was still through jokes. But there was one scene between her and Rose that really felt genuine. And I like that you still had those tender moments of heartfeltness in the middle of all of the funny that kept the heart, going on, if I do say so, throughout Titanic. And I think with that pun, we are out of time. So be on the lookout for part 2 of our Titanic discussion, where we will be talking about more of what we enjoyed and what we didn't enjoy of this current Off-Broadway show. A musical show. We could talk about it in the next episode, how we classify it. But thank you again for joining us here in our box seats. Until the next curtain call.